Harriett Baldwin.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I'm going to start by just saying what a difference a year has made to this country's finances and to the economy. We have seen from last year an inflation rate of 11.1%, down now to 4.6%. Still too high, yes, Madam Deputy Speaker, but enormous progress. And that has been thanks to the Independent Bank of England, but also thanks to the fact that decisions were taken in this chamber a year ago to manage the public finances prudently and in a way that would not increase inflation. And so I think we need to really reflect on the progress that we've made in our economy, because listening to I'm not going to use unparliamentary language, Madam Deputy Speaker, but the speech from the opposition spokesperson, you would not think that anything had changed from a year ago, and has changed enormously. This time last year, our economy was reeling from the energy shock caused by Putin's evil invasion of Ukraine. And it was thanks to the help given through the energy price cap that households were able to get through last winter. And I don't need to remind the House, how serious inflation is for the poorest household. It is the worst tax on our economy, on our businesses, on people's budgets. It is a truly evil problem, and it's right that it has been the #1 focus of the Prime Minister and the government this year. Now, clearly, with inflation at 4.6, there is still more to do. And yesterday, the Treasury Committee heard from the Bank of England Governor, the Bank of England is forecasting that we will get to a 2% handle probably by the end of next year, similar and in line with what the Office for Budget Responsibility is saying. There are clearly still risks to the upside. Energy prices continue to be volatile. But the Governor told our committee yesterday that it's those inflation-busting hikes in rates that have generated the increased payments that our constituents are facing on their mortgages. And therefore, when we heard from the opposition spokesman that it's Tory mortgage hikes, that is complete. It's just trying to throw mud, Madam Deputy Speaker, trying to make mud stick, and it won't stick. Because I am hopeful that rates are now high enough to bring inflation back down under control. In the analogy that the Bank of England uses, we have marched to the top of Table Mountain. We are now walking across the top of Table Mountain. And if you look at the markets, Madam Deputy Speaker, you can see that they are now forecasting that the next change in rates will actually be a decrease. I give way to the Honourable Gentleman.
Very, very grateful to the Right Honourable Lady. I wonder if she remembers the budget of just over a year ago that crashed the economy, that sent interest rates spiralling, that sent mortgage rates up. And let's not forget that there is an interest rate premium in the UK over much of the rest of the Western world, and that's forecast to remain for years to come, because it's simply down to the long-term mismanagement of the UK economy that the Tory government has to take responsibility for.
Well, I'm so glad that the Right Honourable Gentleman made that intervention, because it allows me to repeat the point that, of course, I remember that. And, of course, we all saw what happened. And my whole point of my argument is that thanks to the new Prime Minister and the measures the Chancellor took this time last year, exactly those effects have been worked through, and we can see the progress not only in terms of a reduced rate of inflation, but also in terms of the Office for Budget Responsibility today increasing its growth expectations. A year ago it was expecting a recession this year, and now it's forecasting growth. So that the right honourable gentleman exactly makes my point that we've heard on the record from the Governor that those effects have dissipated and that the year has made all the difference. And I give way to my honourable friend.
I thank her for giving way. Does she reflect, like me, on what the US federal rate currently is? And it's actually very similar to our own interest rates. And so some of the explanations opposite might be interested to see how did they affect the US economy?
Well, he's absolutely right that I think central banks around the world have got lessons to learn from this recent bout of inflation. But I'm comforted by the evidence we got yesterday from the Governor, which, while acknowledging there are still risks to the upside, shows that we are on a trajectory as a world to having dealt with this. May I give way again to the right honourable gentleman?
Very grateful to the right honourable lady and of course my honourable friend on the other side, because these are key points. Because, we hear lots today about growth, but the simple fact of the matter is when you look in the rear view mirror, the US has grown at an average rate about 1% above us over the course of the last decade. And when you look at forecasts for the years to come, they're also higher. So let's get real about what growth looks like and what sustainable economic growth. But the fact remains, UK interest rates are above that of the European Union and have remained above the Western world for most of the last decade and will remain above the rest of the world for many years to come.
Well, look, the right honourable gentleman may think it's the right thing for the UK to join the euro, but I shall fight very strongly against him on that campaign, because I want to return to this theme of what a difference a year makes in terms of the public finances. And it's remarkable to see how the priorities in the autumn statement are being delivered. First of all, reducing debt, something that all of us are very, very keen to reduce on this side of the House. Otherwise, we're just passing on the cost to our children and to our grandchildren. And last year, we were forecasting 94.6%, which, Madam Deputy Speaker, still feels very uncomfortably high to me. And that's why I welcome that in today's autumn statement, we see debt now falling to 92.7% in the same year. I encourage the Chancellor to keep on moving in that direction. The challenge now, Madam Deputy Speaker, is to support growth and non-inflationary growth above all. There were 110 measures announced by the Chancellor today. I have to say, I've gone through the small print of the documentation. I don't think I've got to the bottom of all 110 of them yet, but I'm hoping that when we take evidence both from him and from the Office for Budget Responsibility and from independent economists next week, we will get to the bottom of those. But it's welcome to see that the Office for Budget Responsibility is revising growth up this year, and that the measures announced in the budget were done through that lens of making sure that inflation continues to decline. Cutting tax is also a very important priority because it rewards hard work. And it's good to see, once again, Madam Deputy Speaker, that earnings are growing faster than inflation again. That means that households up and down this country are seeing disposable income once again rise. And we all know, Madam Deputy Speaker, that work is the best route out of poverty. And this announcement on the national living wage, I cannot stress how important I think this is to highlight, because it means that working full-time on the national living wage now gets you to an income of over £22,000. That takes you over the poverty line, and with so many vacancies in our economy, it's going to give more and more people that opportunity to work their way out of poverty. So I thank the Chancellor for that reform, and I thank the Chancellor for the fact that now the income of those on the lowest pay comes predominantly from work, whereas in 2010, Madam Deputy Speaker, the income of those on the lowest incomes was primarily from welfare. And that is a real shift that we can be proud of. I was pleased to hear measures about the grid in the autumn statement. Building domestic sustainable energy is going to mean that we need to improve our grid, build more renewables, also new nuclear and domestic oil and gas. And I was above all very pleased to see the measures backing British businesses, because ultimately it's going to be British businesses that help us grow and for our country to tackle that all-important productivity challenge and to deliver more jobs and more prosperity for the British people. I look forward, Madam Deputy Speaker, in my concluding remarks to encourage the Chancellor to think about simplifying even more. There were some simplifications that I welcome in today's autumn statement, particularly with national insurance for the self-employed. I look forward to seeing the detail in terms of the measures that will help our constituents invest their savings and get better rewarded for their pensions by being able to access advice more easily, and measures that the Chancellor can take in terms of the advice guidance boundary will help enormously on that. And I welcome the funding for a world-class education, and schools in my constituency will very much welcome that record level of per pupil funding in real terms. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, in conclusion, I'm delighted to see so many of these measures. I look forward to scrutinising more of them in detail, and I'm particularly pleased that the Chancellor did not heed the opposition's advice to borrow £28 billion more every year.